Welcome back to Light the Fuse. Or is it Unspooled? Or is it How Did This Get Made? That's the question.
I mean, I think the answer is that it's Light the Fuse.
Oh, all right.
Are you disappointed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for it not to be Light the Fuse, but you're right, it is. But the reason I asked Charles is because of our amazing guest this week, Paul Scheer.
Yeah.
Who is a comedian, an actor, a producer. He does it all. And he's on our show.
Yeah, it was awesome to have him, to talk to him about. I mean, he's so knowledgeable about movies and everything. And it's, we're fans of him as an actor and comedian as well. So it's awesome to have him on the show. So yeah, Drew, I'm excited about that. But before we get into it quickly, we should say, I think the biggest news that we've had is that the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 poster is out.
It's out in the world, flourishing. I haven't seen it IRL yet. Have you?
That's a good point. I have not seen it at the theater yet. But I don't know if I've been much to the theater since it came out. So I'll keep an eye out. If we see it in the wild, we got to take a picture. That's for sure.
That's for damn sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great poster, great design. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I want it. I want one for myself.
You want it on your wall.
Yeah, I mean that's a real photo by the still photographer Christian Black. I saw on his Instagram. We talked about this a little bit on the Patreon. Which, Drew, do you know what a Patreon is?
No.
So it's this thing that we do. You're a part of it, so I don't know how you don't understand what this is, but we record bonus episodes every week, and so we did talk about it a bit on the Patreon. We did a big news roundup for Mission Impossible, talking about some casting news and some other stuff. So if you want to be a part of that, sign up at patreon.com/lightthefuse.
Wait, you were recording that?
Yeah. Those conversations that we have every week, we record them and we release them as a bonus episode on the Patreon.
Oh boy!
So you just always, I guess you always thought it was just a private conversation, but yeah, that's why it's all the juicy stuff. You're gonna want to be a part. You're gonna want to hear all that stuff.
Yeah, get on there, guys. I guess it's worth it. But yeah,
I also wanted to quickly say something. I did not realize this when we had Graham on the show. We had for 3 parts, our last 3 episodes. Graham Moore. I didn't realize he has a third novel. I think I talked about it in the show and just said that he has 2 novels, but he has a third one as well. And so it's in our show notes. We put links to all of his work in all those episodes. But I didn't realize that it's his only modern set one as well, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a legal thriller. It looks very good.
The Holdout.
If you're looking for something, The Holdout. If you're looking for a good, fun book to read, looks good.
The Sherlockian, I think, takes place both in the past and the present, I believe, as well.
That is true.
So
that is true.
He has dipped his toe in there. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I felt bad that I realized as we were putting the show notes together, I was like, oh my God, he's got a third novel. It came out in 2020. I don't know what could have been going on in 2020 that would have distracted me, but that happened. So I didn't know. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure we put that out there, and that's all I've got. So do you want to do your favorite part of the show?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and give it a go. I want to give a shout out to obviously Jeremy Dillon and his podcast, My Favorite Album, which you and I have been. I do remember going on that show, Charles. You and me.
Yeah.
We went on. Yeah, okay.
You knew that we were recording.
I knew that we were recording, yeah, but it's so off the cuff that it just feels like a bunch of friends hanging out. So check that out. And obviously, this episode is also brought to you by John B., Elvis Ripley, and Suchet. So without these fine folk, we would not be able to make the show. And if you want to be a Patreon member, even though I don't understand what it is, Charles at the end of the show will tell you. So we'll be back after this first part with Paul Scheer. We are so excited this week to be joined by Paul Scheer. I feel like we aren't a real podcast until we have Paul Scheer on the show. So I think we've made it. We finally made it.
You've made it, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. We were talking beforehand because Paul was nice enough to mention this show on Dak Shepard's podcast, which is like the most popular podcast on the planet, it seems. So we were just thanking him, but you wanted to talk about sort of something you heard on the show that you really loved.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of this show, and I'm a fan of Mission Impossible. I love everything about McHugh and in Tom Cruise, and I just love hearing their brains deconstruct things. Like there was that it was 8-hour interview that that Macquarie did where he just talked about process, and I've always loved that. And when you had him on for the 100th episode, and he brought on Tom, it was the first time I heard Tom talk about process and the way that he looks at movies. Now, I have a story that I'll tell slightly out of school, but a friend of mine was working on a film, and there was a cameo part in it. And it was a good part, but it wasn't, it'd be a real long shot to get Tom Cruise to do it. But Tom read the script, loved the script, brought my friend over, and then gave him 4 hours of notes. But at the beginning of the note session, he's like, I'm not going to be in this, but I like this. Here's how you can make this better. And and that to me always blew my mind. I was like, wait, so he told you at the beginning of the meeting he wasn't going to be in it. And he's like, yeah. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm just saying that, and if you do the rewrites, I'll be in it. It's like, no. I won't be in this. But I want to support young filmmakers. I want to help you. And every kind of story I've heard about him has taken on this same energy where he's like, okay, I want to help you do this. I've been around a long time. I'm going to give you some of the keys to the kingdom here. I'm going to show you how like the Tom Cruise effect can help you, right? And whether that's Tropic Thunder, whether that's hosting the MTV Music Awards or Movie Awards, whatever he co-hosted there, like he likes to get his hands dirty. And I've had 2 experiences with Tom Cruise, and they're both amazing. One took place after the MTV Movie Awards. He and Katie Holmes were together at that point, and he came down to the party that we were at, and he stood in the center of the dance floor. And when I tell you, the entire party stopped, and everyone got into a line like they were going to Disney World to talk to Tom. And Tom talked to every single person at that party. And not only did he talk to everybody, but people would come up to him and be like, Tom, I'm an actor and I want to do this. And he's like, okay, first thing first, you're going to take a Shakespeare class. You're going to go over here, then you're going to learn this monologue. Then you're going to go over there and you're going to do that. You're going to perform for free in the park and then go over here. And then you're like, oh my God, like he knew about that. And then the next person would come up and be like, Tom, I love taking photos. Like, okay, you need a Lumix. Get a Lumix camera. Start learning manual. Turn it on here. Like he knew, like everyone came with their own issue and he was just doling out advice. So sweet, so nice, never like tired of meeting everyone and wanting to get involved. And what was so interesting to me was at the movie awards, he co-hosted with Aziz Ansari. I did Human Giant with Aziz, and he did his recon on Aziz, which means he did his recon on me. So like he knew Human Giant sketches and he was talking to me. He's like, Paul Scheer, you did Human Giant. Okay, here, what I liked was this. I was like, like you just feel like it. Like I know people talk about like you meet the president and the president, you know, he has like a handler, he or she has a handler and they'll say, oh, that's Paul Scheer, he's in Human Giant, and blah, blah, blah. But Tom feels like he doesn't need the handler. He's got it in his head. Like, and that to me is so impressive. So to hear him on your show, just talk about like what works in a script, what doesn't work in a script. I'm blown away by it. And the same thing goes back to Will Smith. Apparently when he first started his company, him and his producing partner, they watched the top 20 highest grossing films of all time. And they took notes, and then they took all those notes and they put them into a giant document. And then they had a checklist for every blockbuster that they would do. Does it fulfill this criteria? And when him and that producer broke up, that's when when Will Smith's career kind of took this weird turn of not doing blockbusters. Not saying that that's not like whatever it is, but it was like, he had a list, and I'm fascinated by these people who are giant celebrities and understand like movies and audiences on a level that I feel like is that most studios don't.
Yeah, I think that was the first time we had really heard him talk about the audience, and McQuarrie talking about him talking about the audience, and it was really interesting to have some insight into that kind of like supernatural ability to read what people are thinking and feeling, and it was pretty interesting.
He revealed on your podcast that he created an end theme for Top Gun Maverick, and then like the orchestra scored it to whatever he hummed. Right? That was on your. I believe that's what like it was like. These are the craziest things, and I really I have a firm belief that Top Gun Maverick should be the best picture of 2022, only because it brought back movies. And weirdly, Tom Cruise has become like the Mickey Mouse of bringing back movies, because yes, Top Gun Maverick is giant, but then in the midst of this, he's on airplanes doing stunts. His trailers are breaking. Like, it feels like he has taken the whole movie universe and like surrounded himself with like, oh, I make such interesting stuff that you can't, you're so excited to go and see it. Like, the trailer for Mission Impossible got people more excited in my theater than anything in the actual movie that we paid for. And and it's like, and that was, I'm always kind of so anyway, I was really blown away by that, and I feel like it's interesting for anyone who's a writer, anyone who wants to direct, to understand things on that level. And I feel like I never heard anyone talk like that. You want that kind of masterclass from these two guys who arguably have figured it out. Like, they have figured out something. Like, if it's McQuarrie talking about like, oh, I don't write the script until I see the location, and then I write to the location, and then we do this really cool thing. It's like, or this idea like we're rehearsing a scene and we rehearse it for 2 days and then we shoot it, and it starts out as an 8-page scene. It becomes like a quarter of a page scene by the end of it. It's like, yes, like this is the way it should be done. I think, I believe, I don't know.
I think they're the only ones that can do it, though.
Yes, I think so too.
Because I feel like if whoever went out and tried to do it, it wouldn't work. There's some kind of weird alchemy between them, and I think Eddie Hamilton, who's the editor, is the the third point of that triangle.
Yeah.
Of him being able to sort of synthesize all this stuff that's coming in from the shoot.
And it's an interesting thing when you look at the Mission Impossible series, which I love. It starts out in 1996. Really, like, I know I probably will take a lot of flack for this. I'm not the biggest fan of the first one, the De Palma one. Like, it feels to me very much not in the spirit of what this series has become, or even what it was to start with, which was like a team movie. Like, we got, like, the opening is great, like, and there's some beautiful stuff and everything, but I just loved this film franchise started there, and really it just has morphed into this amazing series that has gotten better and better. But it's not like James Bond, because not only is the character staying the same, but the actor is staying the same. So it's like, oddly, he's younger in in these later movies than he was then, and they're way more exciting. I just don't understand how you up the ante. Like, if you look at Daniel Craig and you go, oh well, yeah, like Casino Royale is a departure from Pierce Brosnan. It's like, no, this is just Tom Cruise. Like, this is like the biggest tracking of his career in a weird way. Like, we get to see him kind of bring everything good about Tom Cruise as an actor and as I'm going to call him a straight up stuntman, and a stuntman, like, into, and how he makes movies all together. It kind of like, this is a really, I think, a fascinating franchise when you stand back and you look at it, and maybe at the end of this, I don't know where it ends, because I believe, like with Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise did the impossible feat of passing the torch to himself. Like, he's like, guess what? He's like, you know what? Here's the next generation. It's me. I'm better than all of these people. Because there was that moment, I think it was in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, or maybe it was, I think it was Ghost Protocol, where it was like, well, is Jeremy Renner going to take over? Is that going to be the new Ethan Hunt? And there these moments where, like, he teases, like, maybe not. Like, it's like, yeah.
Well, there were some people who were, I think, trying to make that happen, but
Right.
Tom Cruise wrangled it back and proved that he owns it.
He does.
And belongs there.
First of all, did your friend say that his notes were really great? Because I cannot imagine getting 4 hours of notes from Tom Cruise and not having it improve your movie.
Yeah, he said they were amazing. And here's the thing. It was a straight up comedy script. It wasn't an action movie. So like Tom Cruise is giving notes on a comedy script that my friend is saying like are great. Like just straight up like, and that to me is wild. And, I do feel like he is one of those people who sees every movie that comes out is probably screening somewhere for Tom. And I don't think he's looking backwards as much as he's looking forward. So he's seeing everything out there. And I think he can speak to all of this. So it is the reason why he always is working with really interesting directors. It's the reason why he, I love this collaboration with Macquarie. I feel like the two of them together have really created something incredibly special. And it's exciting to see because I think they both are film nerds, but they are also, and I hate this like term, like there's a Owen Gleiberman article that was written recently. It's like, can mediocre films save cinema? And it's a disrespect to just fun movies, the movies that we all grew up loving. Like,
yeah,
Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark is a great movie. It's not like an Academy Award movie, but it's like, and to call it even like a popcorn movie, sure, like all this sort of stuff, but it's like, it's what we love. Like that's what the theater experience is. I love Blue Valentine, but it's not like, oh, Blue Valentine, like, oh, that's movies to me. It's like, it's beautiful. It's well acted. It's amazing. But I want to go there and be like, I'm like the best experiences in my life have been in crowded theaters, getting people so excited, whether it's Jackass or like the Star Wars, the reboots, or, like I said, like watching this trailer, these are you want to go. And I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I do think it's like, that's what movies should be. Like these big, fun, well-acted, well-produced, events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all genres. Yeah, that article pissed me off.
Yeah, I know.
Stuff like Notting Hill, like that should be a movie that people come to the theaters for, like stuff. There should be more stuff like that,
I've had a real issue with like the deterioration of like the mid-budget movie.
Yeah.
Because I think growing up, and if you talk to Quentin Tarantino, and he talks about this a lot in his podcast, like he rails against like the 80s, but I grew up in that time where you actually got to make some very weird stuff. And it wasn't that expensive, so it didn't make that much. If it failed or succeeded, it would also have a second life on, the cable. And I just felt like there was more risk taking there. And whenever I see anyone doing that, I'm like, more. Like this last little bit of time, whether it's like Cocaine Bear, Megan, Plane, like, yeah, like these are the weird movies that I kind of really loved, like growing. These are the ones that we were talking about. It wasn't always just the big tentpole blockbusters.
Yeah.
So what was your second interaction with Tom Cruise?
My second interaction with Tom Cruise was at another party, and his son was DJing, and he stood in the center of the floor, or in the center of like the DJ area, but in the dancing area. I just was trying to figure out how to frame it for you mentally. Like, so he's down below the DJ booth, but dead center to the DJ booth. Everyone's kind of dancing, and he is so intently enjoying the DJ set. Like he is like it, like he is like, yes, good. Like he is grooving to it, but not dancing with other people. It's like, I am here. I'm making eye contact with my son. Like my son is doing a great job, and I am proud of him. It was like the way that a dad might watch, or any parent might watch, like a sports game. Like it was like he was eyes were not coming off, and he was in that moment. No one was coming up to him because he was like locked in on his son DJing. It was like, I'm here for the big game. My son's DJing this event. And I am here for it. And again, lovely. But like, I've been with bigger celebrities who have a lot of security presence around them. And you can kind of tell. I'm sure Tom Cruise definitely has security presence around him. In that moment, I saw no one. I saw, like, he wasn't surrounded by anyone. He, in a weird way, he was an island. Just a straight up island in like, And people gave him that space. So that was a very interesting moment. It just felt like the intensity that he gave his script notes to my friend and the way that he watched his son DJ, it was like, same. I'm here for you.
We like to think of him as a father, but I think he just looks on at us disapprovingly, and wondering why we didn't do more with our lives.
Was it a good DJ set?
Yeah, it was good. It was, it wasn't, look, I think a lot of times you get to, I've seen a lot of celebrity DJ sets, and not that his son is a celebrity, but I'm going to put him in that same category, where you're like, hey, here's something you've never heard before and you can't dance to, and that's not fun. And his son was like, no, dance party, fun, this is songs that you like, well done. Like, I almost feel like a great DJ is the party is going and you're just enjoying it. Like, you're ready to go. And I feel like that his son did a great job.
Did he throw in any Tom Cruise nods? Any old time rock and roll? Or
I mean, I wish. I mean, just like some underscoring, like girl talk underscoring of like the the different Mission Impossible themes.
Yeah. Berlin, whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that.
Thrown in. Just to make Dad proud.
Get in there. Get in there. Like, just he did. Now, the one thing that was interesting was he did have a fuse that went across his entire DJ set, and he lit it at the start. And when it goes out, the DJ set was over.
We would love that. So you saw the first one probably when it came out. You weren't
in
that
theaters.
Enthusiastic.
I liked it just fine. Like, I felt like people really talked about it in a way where, like, there are, again, iconic moments there. I think part of the thing that I'm probably wrestling with, and this is also where I'm coming at from a different perspective, like, it's very De Palma, right? And I think that it lacked a sense of fun. And I think that, like, the best James Bond movies, there's a tightness to that movie, I think, in my mind, that the show is fun, the show is alive, and I think to put it all on Tom Cruise's shoulders, it felt to me like, oh, you set up this great team, we just meet them and they all get killed. It's a great open, but it feels like that could have been like the second or third one in the trilogy. I want to see, and yes, he does put together the team, I guess, at a certain point. It lacked to me. I didn't understand the obsession with it, but I understand, like, what was cool about it. Obviously the sequence in the room where he's like coming down from the ceiling, amazing, beautifully shot. The fish tank jumping out of the restaurant. Like, there's a lot of great stuff in it. It just is probably the one that I revisit the least. Well, maybe Mission Impossible 2. Maybe Mission Impossible 2 is the least. But I do feel like there's something about this series that, by hook or by crook, they are kind of figuring out what it is. Like, what is this? And I feel like it did start off a little bit differently and then, like, John Woo was like, oh, that's too much of a course correction. And I felt like, oh, is it going to be like it felt like at a certain point it was going to be a Marvel thing, where it's like, because the first three really feel like, that's a John Woo movie, that's a J.J. Abrams movie, that's a De Palma movie. And I feel like, and I think you guys have talked about this, like, and then it became like, no. Mission, like, I think this is what Marvel does so well. Like, it's a Marvel movie that has flavors of the director. So, like, Taika can get in and put his fingerprints on it, but it's still at the core a Marvel movie. And I feel like Tom kind of oddly wrestled away a full directorial vision, and now it's a little bit more, you got peanut butter and, jelly in my peanut butter. It's a little bit more of a mix and match. It's not like you come over and you give me the version. And I feel like even when he was on your show talking about it, like, that idea that it was like, well, no, what do we want to, like, what do I want to do and what do you want to do? And I feel like there was a little bit more of in those first three. And I think three, feels like, I think Tom Cruise saw what J.J. Abrams was doing with Alias and was like, oh, I want that. That's the tone I want. And but I also want to kind of go up a little. Like, I feel like he was kind of figuring, it was almost like we got a couple different stews before, like, he's perfect, or let's say chili. I mean, he perfected the chili recipe now.
Yeah, I mean, I think 4 is very much a Brad Bird movie, though.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it has, but it's tricky to say because it's also like Brad Bird first live action. So it like, I guess I feel like because his style is not as cemented, like I know like, oh yes, your Pixar mentality, but that Pixar mentality I think actually was okay in the world. Like it's like I didn't understand exactly. I can't see the direct correlation as cleanly as the other ones. Like, oh, these are the same shots.
And 4 was when McQuarrie entered the picture. So,
Yes.
That's the big deal for that one as well.
And I do think that McQuarrie, like I think McQuarrie is an interesting guy because I feel like McQuarrie is like a yes and kind of a guy where it's like, okay, yes, we'll make it bigger like this. Like his directing is so beautiful. It's epic. It's stunning. It looks fantastic, but I also don't feel like it's a handprint on it. Like it feels effortless. And I think that that's a sign of a really great director. Sometimes a lot of directors get slighted for that. Like I feel like Sarah Polley got slighted for that with Women Talking. It's like, she's so good and Women Talking is so phenomenal, but you don't go like, oh, that's a beautifully directed picture, because it's actually so well directed. Like it doesn't feel like it's trying. It's a sort of like, oh, well, yeah. Like, well, no. She is responsible for all of that. Like the reason why it's so good is because of her. It's a weird thing. I sometimes feel like a really efficient, like, I don't know. I was just watching Creed 2 and Creed 1 last night, and I was like, oh, man, you understand Ryan Coogler as a director by watching those two movies back to back. You're like, oh, he brings so much to it that is so kind of effortless and fluid and so cool and so interesting. And Stephen Capel Jr., like, great job. No issue, but it's like, you realize like the flow of him. And I think that's what we experienced here. Like McQuarrie he's working with Tom. Like they're just kind of like, I feel like they are sparring, like they're creating this thing together, like in a way.
And they're so determined to I don't know if the word is right exactly, please an audience, or create this great thing for the audience, great experience for the audience.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know if you're making me think about the whole Tom Cruise career and everything that he's done, because he worked with so many directors, early in his career, and I feel like it was like serving the director's vision, and then it was a sort of a turn around the time of MI3, like
yes.
after War of the Worlds, and then it's like he's now been working with some of the just like mainly the same directors over and over again. It's like Doug Liman, Christopher McQuarrie, Joseph Kosinski. And now there's like a focus more on, instead of making like serving a director's vision, it's like serving an audience's vision in a way.
yeah.
What is the ideal movie for the audience that's going to make the best experience for them,
And I think that like Tom Cruise is an interesting guy, because I'm thinking about this vision that you're talking about too. And it's like, I think that he views himself as like the paintbrush, and he wants like a great director to use me to make a great paint. Like, I think what makes him so good is that he is constantly striving to do better. And I think that, when I watched Top Gun Maverick, I go, well, that's the way that you do a reboot. Like we've seen now so many misfires, or like a movie that's 3/4 good. And he like, oh, no. He analyzed everything that has gone on in these like 30 years between films, reboot, sequels, whatever they are. And he like synthesized them into this mix. And I feel like he is, maybe in a weird way, it's his producerial muscle that we're really experiencing. He as a producer is saying, I got the best actor, me, and I'm gonna get the best director, you. But I'm gonna guide this whole process here, and we're gonna work together. And I feel like, and some whatever I've heard with, I'm sorry, who directed American Made? You just said his name.
Oh, Doug Liman.
Doug Liman's very experimental, and so is McQuarrie. Like, let's try it this way, let's try it that way. I don't know that much about Kosinski's, but I feel like that idea, I think, really works for him. Like where it's like, I need options. Give me more options. Let's try different things. And I think that's where you get the best version of him.
Yeah, and he also seems to be somebody who is, as the biggest movie star in the world and one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, always willing to do the best thing for the movie, even if it means diminishing his role in some respect. It's always about like what makes the movie the best. And I think that's just really interesting.
Well, it's interesting, we just talked about him as being a producer, and it's fascinating to me that there's not like and I'm sure there is, but a Tom Cruise production company that is making other things. And I think this is the thing that is really fascinating about him is like he is focused on one thing, the Tom Cruise machine. And he's going to use that eye for that. Like, he's not trying to get into a lot of different areas. He's not trying to make TV. It's not like, the Tom Cruise company is now making a risky business limited series at FX. It's like, he seems to be very focused. I think it's like, how can we make the next great Tom Cruise film? And I think in a weird way, by simplifying that, not taking these big deals, not having to deliver anything else, it keeps his quality level high. It also keeps his focus incredibly straightforward. It's like he's not going to be pushed and pulled in a million directions.
So why don't you tell us your thoughts on Mission Impossible 2?
Look, I like John Woo. I think that movie has some fun stuff in it. I did rewatch all of these recently. And I think that movie is fun. It definitely does not feel like Mission Impossible, but there are some great, like, I love, is it, Thandie Newton, like her, I'm mispronouncing her name, I know, but she's the love interest in that, am I right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that love interest. I think that's one of the most, I think there's like the sexiest, like Mission Impossible in many ways.
Yeah.
We're always rooting for her to come back, but
she feels ready to go. Look, if we're going to bring back Gal Gadot and Fast and Furious from the dead, we can bring back her. I mean, so I guess my end result on that is too much motorcycles. Like, I think that's what I may feel at the end of the day. Like, I do like the opening. And that's the thing about all of these movies. It's like, it may not be like my favorite one, but it's still a high-rated movie. Like, again, like Mission Impossible 1 and 2 may not be my two favorites, but they are still great movies that are incredibly iconic. I just feel like, to your point, he is in someone else's movie, and I think that John Woo doesn't age as well. Like, Hard Boiled ages a little bit better than that. That movie feels really of its time in a weird way, like the way that like Diamonds Are Forever like kind of locks in Sean Connery's Bond. Like, it feels a little like, okay, yeah, this is a moment. These are styles. Like, it was also a time when like culturally, like we really locked into a lot of styles. And that movie was like, these wraparound sunglasses, everything is like a little, it's like, it just feels like, and it like, but again, I was there. I own all of these movies proudly.
Have you heard Charles's gay subtext reading of the second one?
I mean, it's not really that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I feel like it's not even subtext, but like the Richard Roxburgh and Doug Ray Scott relationship.
Oh, yes.
It's straight out of North by Northwest, which is also has that kind of feeling as well. We where it's Martin Landau and James Mason. And there's pretty obvious the way it's done. I mean, the way he like bends him over and cuts off his finger, and they have that like really crazy intimate kind of moment. I mean, it's pretty intense.
I agree. I mean, like there is like, and I do think that's like, and that element I talk about like that, like the sensuality there's something there, and that's something that is very different. Like, as much as Tom Cruise is like a very much like a leading man, I find his sex scenes are like that is not a part that often leads. Like, even in Top Gun Maverick, like I love the way they did the sex scene between him and Jennifer Connelly. Like, but it was very like
innocent.
Like, I feel like there's
very
like
innocent.
innocent,
Especially compared to the first movie, even.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, a million times. And so I feel like John Woo got some interesting stuff out there, like a little bit more of, I don't know. There are some things that I like. It feels a little bit more steamy across the board, like a little bit, and I think that like, and that's, look, you get positives and negatives with that style. We're going to get a lot of doves. I don't mind the doves. I'm not going to shit on the doves. And I also think if I'm Tom Cruise, what better way to continue because I do feel like he fought for this franchise. I don't think that anyone in 1996 would have thought, oh, this is still going to be going on in 2023.
Right.
And beyond. And I think part of the move to get John Woo, and again, you guys know, and I've listened to a lot of your episodes, but I'm sure you've already talked about this, but like the idea of like John Woo coming in was to say, hey, this can be anything. Like it's such a table set, like a brand new table. It's like, we're not going to do it always the same. And maybe in a weird way, it's answering to James Bond and saying it's not going to always feel the same. It almost will feel so different based on who we get. And I think that was maybe a smart way to approach it. I think it's definitely the way, like, again, the way that DC, before James Gunn comes in, was approaching it. It's like, well, here's Todd Phillips' Joker. Here's Matt Reeves' Batman. It's like, whatever they're going to do, you take me and you make me into your next thing. And it's like, and chances are it will be, if worst case, fine. Best case, you'll love it.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think they should do with the James Bond franchise.
I agree.
Because they're always talking about trying to make more movies. Like, you don't have to make one continuity. You could go off and have Ryan Coogler go make a movie with Idris Elba. Just make one James Bond movie with them. And it's a one-off, and if it does great, then make another one with him. But in the meantime, you can also go over here and make one with your new, continuity Bond who's going to be doing it for years and years or whatever. And
because I think the idea with James Bond that is confining is, what do we love about James Bond? Like, it's hard to really pinpoint what James Bond does that no other giant action hero does. And in this day and age, like if you put like James Bond, John Wick, Ethan Hunt, any Liam Neeson character where he's going off and killing a bunch, like at a certain point, you look at all these people and you're like, what, like, okay, James Bond wears a tuxedo and he's British and, it's like, oh yes, he drinks a martini, but like, what are these things that, like there's something about it where I think at the core of it, after reading all those books too, it's a faceless agent. It is a blank slate. It's episodic television. It's like, yes, he falls in love with the girl, and then by the time the next movie started, like, there's no hide or hair of that girl. It's like, and we want to do a new adventure. So why can't you have Idris Elba and Ryan Coogler make a James Bond and then be like, and his name is James Bond too? And who gives a shit? Like, it's like there's other 00 agents out there. Like it's a weird connection that we have to like, for episodic movie making. And I do believe that like there's something with Ethan Hunt that he's done really interesting, which is like, yes, they are standalone missions, but they are kind of all wrapping together but it can kind of be its own thing. I had a conversation with a friend the other day about Fast 10, and someone's like, is Fast 10 going to be as big as Top Gun Maverick? And I was like, absolutely not. There's no way. Because Top Gun Maverick is a movie that everyone saw and everyone wanted to see. And that has like, and I think there's something about like the way that Tom Cruise makes movies where it's like, oh, this is acceptable for your dad, your mom, the young kids, old kids. Like it just kind of feels like it's a true, terrible term, but 4-quadrant movie, where it's like, it's like, but it's unintentionally that, where Fast and Furious, I think, is like, oh, that's not for me. I'm not into that stuff. Dom Toretto. And, it's like, and I feel like Mission Impossible has been, I think, reaching towards that as he get, like, I'm curious to see what this next Mission Impossible does. Can it be as big? I think it might. I think that Maverick has opened up something in culture that could make these next Mission Impossibles the biggest ones yet.
That's what we think. And we also think about everybody that saw Top Gun 8 times, saw that trailer 8 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yes,
people are just primed.
The sequel to Top Gun Maverick is going to be Mission Impossible. I mean, that's truly it. Like that, like, and it's going to be better. And then you're going to, he's a genius.
Yeah.
He's a damn genius,
And we are back.
Yes, we are. We're back. That was great. I mean, what did you think?
I mean, I was dying laughing the whole time. He's just so funny, but he has great insight.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell you, Charles, that I got a text message just now that popped up from my wife, who's also in the house, and she said, "Jesus Christ," to my my line reading right there. We're back. So. You aren't the only one being pained by this.
You need to soundproof that booth better so that she can't hear you.
What happens in here stays in here, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was a great chat, and obviously someone who loves the franchise and loves talking about it. So I mean, what more do you want? You know?
I know. Yeah, I love the story about Cruise after the MTV Movie Awards giving everyone advice on the dance floor. Like there was like a long line of people and him just giving the practical advice to every single person. Amazing. And totally, yep, like I was like, that's the most believable story after everything we've learned about him over the last few years. And it's funny, at one point he says it was on our podcast that Cruise came up with a music theme for the end of Maverick and hummed it for the orchestra. That must have been somewhere else, because I don't remember hearing that in our podcast or anywhere for that matter. Do you?
No, we should reach out to Paul and see where that anecdote came from.
Yeah. I want to find out what that was.
I mean, the 200th was kind of a blur to me, so if you had told me that he had been, reciting ancient poetry or,
yes,
recipes for a soup, I would have believed it.
I think we were both in such shock that I'd believe anything.
Yeah.
So maybe we did. Maybe that is in there.
What else?
I don't know. It was just so much great analysis of Tom Cruise and his career, and there's more next week. We dive more into other Mission Impossible movies and
Piranha 3D. What people
also
we
talk about Piranha 3D, which you and I are actually very big fans of that movie, and he was in it, and we find out some funny stories from on set, and it's great. It's awesome. So that's about it for me. I got a special thank you I got to give. I want to give a thank you to...
Well, you got to tell us about the Patreon first.
Okay, well, all right. So there's this thing. It's called a Patreon.
Okay.
You go to this website. It's patreon.com/lightthefuse. You sign up. I think you have to probably put your credit card info in. That's just a little minor hiccup. And then you get bonus episodes if you sign up at the Mission Commander level. And then there's also higher levels you can sign up at. And it's just a great way of supporting this show and making it possible for us to do this show and create episodes for you week after week after week, because we don't stop. We are relentless. You have gotten an episode every Friday for the last almost 5 years now. So I hope you're enjoying that. If you're not, I'm sure you're just not listening, so that's fine. But I, with the Patreon in mind, I want to give a special thank you to Nathan Lawrence and to Mark Mahan. Thank you, Nathan and Mark, for making this episode possible.
Sounds like that guy's bringing some mayhem to the Patreon.
It's with an N, Mahan.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
But I'm sure he appreciates that. I also want to credit our mixer and editor, Luke Burson, who always does a wonderful job for us, and our Daredevil composer, Kevin Blumenfeld, who's always just, he's just testing the waters, just daring Paramount to sue him for his music that he does that is a little too close for comfort to the Mission Impossible theme. So thank you to Kevin and Luke and to all of you out there. Anything else, Drew?
I just want to remind people to follow us on social media at LightTheFuse-Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Big stuff coming up. So if you want to be on the front lines of the news, please follow us on social media. And just remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you know what? Tell your friends about it. Bring it up in conversation.
Tell your enemies, too.
Yeah, really tell your enemies, because, we are not a very likable group. And if you want to exact your revenge, just, tell them to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And that's it, I think. And then next week we'll be back with Paul Scheer Part 2. And we got some good interviews lined up. We got 2 big ones this week. Right?
Yes.
Good Lord. Oh, my
Knock
Lord.
on wood, they happen. So hopefully we'll be having some good upcoming episodes for you all, as we always do, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Well, we have episodes. They're not always good, but we have them. So what more do people want?
Yeah.
Come back next week for Paul Scheer.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.